Hybrid fitness racing, the idea of that cardio and resistance being mixed together, the growth of the sport, the new deadly dozen, and how would you do one's strength and conditioning for a race like that? Hello and welcome to On the Rocks podcast with me, Coach Marshy. Hope everyone's well. So let's dive straight into today's episode then. So with this growing world of hybrid fitness and that racing world accelerating through Hyrox and other various races out there, we're going to welcome today's guest into the show. So hello, Jason. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thanks.
Good. So Jason, before we dive into who you are too much, let's just go really specific. In terms of what I've just said there in the hybrid fitness world, who are you in relation to that? And what do you have to do with the hybrid fitness racing scene these days?
So first and foremost, I created the race, the Deadly Dozen, which is essentially been started this year, but I published a full training manual on the race and the methodology last year. And within a couple of days, really, of releasing one of the races, it sold out, within I think it was 10 minutes, we sold over 200 tickets. So it's a fast growing race. Well, I'm sure we'll get into it. Aside from that, I own a gym and it's a Hyrox affiliated gym. We have dozens of athletes that go and compete in the Hyrox all over sort of the country and into Europe. And that's me basically. So gym owner, I'm a published author, write all things strength and conditioning, but my main contribution to this side of things is my race, which is the Deadly Dozen.
So let's just go back a little bit then and press rewind to kind of understand your background. In terms of that kind of strength and conditioning scene and sports science coming onto the world, say, very late 90s and that early adopters, Manchester United Football Club as one example, but now the way that people like Dave's Brailsford with the cycling and everything else have taken this on. Strength and conditioning for sport and within the fitness industry has grown over that 20-year period. And obviously you've had a lot to do with sort of publishing various training manuals and advice on that. What are your thoughts on sort of the world of sports science and strength and conditioning and how it's grown?
Oh, it's fantastic because essentially, like I was a military physical training instructor, and that's where things started to begin really for me in terms of, understanding strength and conditioning and what that term meant, which is essentially the development of competitive athletes. And when I left the military in 2015, I set my sort of little studio up after a while. And I used the term strength and conditioning coach. And every man and his dog told me, don't use that term. No one knows what it is. You want to call yourself a personal trainer. You want to use the term transformation, all this sort of stuff. And I stuck to my guns really because that was the sort of background that I was developing while I was still in the military, which was S&C, and my tagline for my initial company, which was the gym, starting off as a personal training company, really, which was 5S Fitness, strength, speed, stamina, supplement, skill. The whole emphasis was bringing strength and conditioning to masses. So the idea was just a higher level, more educated, more sports science, evidence-based approach to physical training. And my mentality was that average was no longer average. Normal folk, quotation marks, were doing ultra events. They were doing, whether they're doing white collar shows, whether they're doing tough mudders. Fitness racing at the time wasn't really, in the limelight. It wasn't a thing so much, other than CrossFit, of course. But I stuck to my guns and I really pushed it. And over the last, 8 years now, almost a decade, I see trainers everywhere calling themselves S&C coaches, and because it's become the mainstream that people are wanting to train at a higher level. And even people have the misconception that strength and conditioning is elite level sport, but it's any level of sport. So it can be grassroots, it can be hobbyist athletes. It's what we often call professional amateurs. So they're amateur athletes, but they want to work at a professional level. And that can be someone that just runs tough mudders. So it's an average Joe that works a normal job, yet they want to train like a pro athlete. and they want a coach that is the best coach. And that's why I set up my academy, which was strengthandconditioningcourse.com, the SEC Academy, which was essentially, the tagline was become the expert. So it was upskilling personal trainers. So we qualified personal trainers internationally, and strength and conditioning coaches. But the idea behind the course really was to raise up the standard of the PT qual, raise up the standard of the S&C qual, and essentially upskill people so they felt confident to work with athletes. And that's not necessarily meaning working with Manchester United or working with Manchester City. It could well be. But really what it was normal personal trainers working with people that wanted to be really good at the things they do, because average is no longer average. Like, I get, middle-aged men and women come in and I find out they're doing ultra marathons, they're doing like 100 milers and stuff like that. It's crazy. So S&C's come a long way, because I think these days with the accessibility of information with podcasts and YouTube, then there's no reason why you shouldn't be an absolute expert. And the average Joe, not only are they wanting to be a higher standard at what they do, they've also got a much better understanding of the gym. When I first started, it was almost like teaching people how to use kettlebells and dumbbells and the barbell. Nowadays, people walk through my gym door and they've already had a background in CrossFit, or they've done a little bit of Olympic weightlifting. So the standard of the average person as a gym goer is much higher. So they expect more from the coaches.
Yeah. No, really interesting, actually. I had a follow-up question as I was going through that, but then your answers there kind of have changed it a little bit. The question was going to be, when we take strength and conditioning and elite principles of training and apply it to the amateur recreational athlete, as we kind of refer to it, maybe, what do you think the gains are? Do you think there's big gains for people? Or do you see that those people are taking it really quite seriously now? Like you've mentioned there in your answer that people are coming in and they expect more from it. You kind of half answered it for me, but do you find that when you apply those S&C principles to that average Joe, that the gains can be huge from it in terms of performance?
Oh, absolutely. Because it's what good S&C is, which is contrary to popular belief. People believe that good S&C is like hyper specificity. So like really, crazy training methods and all this, weird and wonderful stuff. But really it's fundamentals done really well, and training loads managed really well, and understanding what performance quality. So what we do as an S&C coach is you do a needs analysis. What are the needs of the athlete? What are the needs of the sport? You then essentially do a testing battery where you analyze, you get objective data. So objective measures of where that person is currently at and what they need to improve. And you look at the performance qualities, what you call like the components of fitness, like muscular strength, endurance, speed. And you develop goals from that, and you develop a training program. Now that training program, talking about elite sport, people think, well, it must be elite exercises. No, it's fundamental exercises like, hinge movements like deadlifts, squats, bench press, sprint work, speed work, stuff like that. Obviously zone 2 endurance work. But what a really good S&C coach does is understand how to manage that athlete, how to manage training loads, because any idiot can write a program that gets someone really fit on paper. But it's about how can we maximize the adaptation without getting negative results, i.e. regressions in performance, which are injuries and burnout and stuff like that. So it's about a good S&C coach sprinkles in the different training modes, whether it be long, steady work, your zone 2 sort of work, whether it be tempo work, whether it be interval work, whether it be strength training within the gym or circuit training and muscular endurance work. And from years of experience and also understanding athletes, because no two athletes are the same, they can create a program and coach that individual to peak for an event, where you'd have a taper, you'd reduce your training loads, and then you'd go to the competition feeling good, and that would be over the long term. So S&C really is thinking about a bigger picture rather than just a 4 to 6 week training block. We're thinking about, right, where do you want to be in a year's time? Where do you want to be in 2 years' time? For example, a quadrennial cycle is a 4-year Olympic training plan, where we're not programming everything, but we're thinking about the big picture. Like, what do you want to achieve in the next year, and how can we help you do that?
Yeah, no, it's really refreshing to hear, and actually, probably really important. It's probably really important for those that don't have that education that you've just gone through there. Not in terms of coaches, in terms of athletes that are recreational and have got into hybrid fitness racing of some sort, or they do marathons, ultra marathons, whatever. And understanding that there can be a process that they go through where it's tailored to them, and that not every, there's not one size fits all, as you've pointed out there. And I think, being in the fitness industry myself now for a long time, we actually happen to start our gyms at the same time by the sounds of it. But that experience that I've got over the years of being in the industry is that there seems to be this, you can turn up to a gym and we're all going to do this program, and that will make us all good runners, and that will make us all good half marathoners and marathoners. And actually what you've just said there is really important. Hopefully a lot of people that are listening can take that away and understand that they can employ a coach that could make them peak for various events at the right time. And we'll talk about that in a second, actually, with the hybrid space. But let's talk about Hyrox and your gym. You've become a Hyrox affiliate. Were you an early adopter in that? Whereabouts did that happen for you?
No, I wasn't an early adopter. I was actually offered to be very early, because we were did a lot in the OCR space, obstacle course racing, because we have a massive rig, and we're one of the main gyms in the north of England that had a huge rig with, I think it's 55 monkey bars, and we had some sort of individuals, a guy called Sean Wild, Matt Rigby, that were really heavily involved in OCR. Especially Sean Wild was a big advocate of pushing it, wrote OCR courses. So we were involved with various people. That one individual sent me a link to be a Hyrox affiliate very early on, but I just didn't see the point. I was just like, why am I going to pay him 100 quid a month? Because I don't think I'm going to gain anything out of it. There's nothing to gain. I can train. I mean, I was a little bit bemused initially when people were sort of saying, like, if you're not a Hyrox gym, you can't train for Hyrox. And I was like, this isn't the CrossFit model. The CrossFit model, yes, which was essentially you're in a CrossFit box, CrossFitters go to CrossFit competitions. The way Hyrox was pushing itself was, this is the race for everybody. And people from pure gyms, whatever gym you go to, could train up and come and do a Hyrox. And then you had the affiliates, which often tended to be independent gyms that then became real specialists. But in the early days, I seen people saying, oh, you shouldn't be doing Hyrox training if you're not an affiliate. And I'm like, I don't think that's the way it should be. Hyrox should be advocating that, anyone can come and do this race, but obviously giving benefits to the affiliates. And the way it works now is you get early access, and that's worth its weight in gold, isn't it? Now that the races are selling out.
Yeah.
So it was after I did Manchester, where I did a doubles in the morning and a solo like a couple of hours after, and I was like, basically, I felt in the air that I was like, right, this is the time to be a Hyrox affiliate, because it's just it's already huge, but it's going mainstream, right? And that's when I signed up, and So not a crazy amount of time ago. We've been training for Hyrox for probably 18 months, 2 years, longer. There's been guys at my gym that have been training for Hyrox. They've been doing it pre-COVID. But we became a Hyrox affiliate in the last year because I thought it was the right time to go. This is me being a little bit tight businessman, sort of going, why am I paying someone 100 quid? And then, last year I was like, right, now is the time.
So was it Manchester 23 that you're talking about?
Yeah, actually, yeah. So it was So it was Manchester 24. It was this year.
This year.
This year that we basically went, right, now's the time.
I mean, that was a great event. We were there.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it was brilliant, and it was just obvious that it was going. In all honesty, it wasn't the event that showed it me. It was my personal social media. It was my Facebook, where I just seen people that I knew that were into fitness, but not that into fitness, and they were talking about Hyrox.
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay, this is filtering out now even more than it was, the year before. It was getting big, but it wasn't. It blew up this year, basically, is what I saw.
Yeah, and obviously, I agree. And I think, at the time of recording this, we're a few days post this 365 announcement. So we'll see how that goes. We've not really been told what it means yet. No. We know what it means, but we haven't been given any more information of how that's going to work for us as gyms. But hopefully, I think there's a few guests lined up to come and clarify that a little bit for us as well, as to what that means for a Hyrox training club. I believe we're going to be rebranded to.
Okay.
So yeah, but to be honest, it sounds exciting, and it sounds, the thing that I liked about Hyrox, and I noticed it in Manchester this year as well, was their learning curve is really quick. So they will, from the Saturday to the Sunday, if they don't like something and it doesn't work for the event, they change it in terms of like the flow of people in and out, or the where the finish exit is, if it's like sort of busy. They learn really quickly. So, you know, I think you're right. It's gone mainstream, and well, will it replace the kind of half marathon person? I don't know, is the answer. I don't know. What's your thoughts? Do you think it will replace that a bit?
I think fitness racing is what I've coined as conventional fitness racing, which is a low technical barrier to entry and a low strength barrier to entry. So I consider CrossFit to be specialist. It's got a high technical barrier and often a high strength barrier. OCRs are sort of specialist, sort of technical with the rigs and stuff like that. So anything that's just simple stuff like Deadlift doesn't, Decker, Hyrox, and it's just essentially you just need to get fit enough to do the race. You don't have to learn to do ring dips, or you don't have to learn to do like an Olympic snatch. I think it's going to be one of the biggest sports in the world, not just Hyrox, this whole scene of conventional fitness racing. Obviously, Hyrox is carrying everyone else, and that there's a sort of, you know, the king of it at the moment. And I think they'll remain king for a long time. But yeah, I think it's, you know, everything's going to see a peak. You know, you've seen that with OCI, you've seen it with CrossFit, you see it, everything's, you know, has its time in vogue. But I think the way that the gym industry is going, where the youth of today are all training, what conventional fitness racing does is turn normal gym activities into a sport. Everything becomes specific. So rather than it just being, I'm getting stronger to do a half marathon, you're literally lunging to be better at lunges. You're going on the rower to be better at the rower. You're going on the ski to be better at the ski. So it revolutionizes the gym, that already people are just, you know, flocking to gyms. The youth of today are doing more and more. That, yeah, I honestly think it's going to be one of the biggest sports in the world. And I think that because of the cross-training nature of it, I think it makes it very low injury risk, because you're not doing too much of the same thing, where overuse injuries are just, you know, horrific in things like running and stuff like that. Not that there's anything wrong with running. It's just, you know, a lot of people, I see more injuries from running, more injuries from like heavy strength training, powerlifting as an S&C coach, from other sports like rugby, cricket, boxing, than I do from hybrid fitness racing. It's a very, I call it like the true lifelong sport, because this is something that you can do from childhood essentially now. And there's no reason why you can't continue to be an age group athlete. And I think that the key to these fitness races is to make them accessible to as many people as possible by having low barrier to entry. Because at the end of the day, if something's not quite heavy enough, go faster. And then obviously you can have pro categories and stuff. So that's key for me with the Deadly Dozen. Make it, I claim it's one of the most accessible races in the world, because it only uses body weight, dumbbells, kettlebells, and plates, weight plates. So yeah, I honestly believe fitness racing of this type, conventional fitness racing, as I coined it, is going to be one of the biggest, if not the biggest sport in the world.
So go on then. I'm going to try and get you to commit here. Do you think it could, Hyrox on the grid, as they've done the majors with the grid system, do you think it could be an Olympic sport?
Yeah, I think conventional fitness racing will be, no doubt. Whether it'll be Hyrox that will be the one, I don't know. I mean, Hyrox like just the powerhouse, aren't they? They just dwarf everything. So it's like, I think Hyrox should be, like, they should be part of Olympic sport. But I think that actually the Olympics would maybe be suited to just come up with their own conventional fitness race, which essentially, because where I think what people try and do with fitness racing is they try and, what Hyrox got right is a race from A to B. There's no stopping. And it's not about trying to sort of target what a lot of, I think, has a CrossFit emphasis from it, or a influence, is that they try to go, right, let's create a strength zone, let's create an endurance zone, let's create a metcon zone. They want to have the most complete race in the world, where we're like, we can class these athletes as the fittest in the world because we can show they're the strongest, we can show they're the most agile, we can show they're the fastest, right? I don't think that's the key to developing the best fitness race in the world. I think the key to developing the best fitness race in the world is not having a strength zone where you've got to be the strongest guy to win it. It's that it's a race that's more general, that goes from A to B, yet having the performance qualities as high as they can be allows you to be better at that race. So at the end of the day, if you're stronger, that 30 kilo kettlebell is lighter, 32 kilo kettlebell is lighter. If you're faster, that 400 meter run on the Deadly Dozen is going to be faster. If you've got better endurance. So it's not specifically testing these qualities to their maximum, because that's where you get specialists excelling. And that's where, like, which performance qualities do you value most? It's got to be hybrid. So that's what I did with the Deadly Dozen, was I thought, how can I create the best race that's A to B for that? And I think Hyrox, I'd be really happy if Hyrox became an Olympic sport. I think that would be fantastic. But I think there's argument to say that there should be a race that has a load of experts come in, strength conditioning coaches, hybrid fitness racers, and go, right, come up with the best race from everything we've learned from Hyrox, Deadly Dozen, Deca, all these key players, and go, right, what is the best race and what's accessible? And to be honest, I think I've already got what's accessible for the Olympics, which is on a track. I mean, it missed me why there's no reoccurring events on tracks, because there's over 300 tracks just in England. There's probably thousands and thousands in North America. So there's tens of thousands of tracks worldwide, and they're all the same, right? Because they're designed to a set standard, and they have a big space in the middle where you can do a load of functional activities like kettlebells, dumbbells, weight plates. You can even do rower ski erg and stuff, right? So it lends itself as an Olympic sport. And one thing Hyrox did very well was, I think, other than wall balls, I think they could have had a bike erg to finish. So you'd had a ski erg to start, row in the middle, and a bike to finish, because everything would be A to B then. So the judging would be incredibly easy. Wall balls is a nightmare. Same with goblet squats on my race and stuff like that. So if they had a bike to finish, like a 2K bike, because it's like a 2-to-1 ratio. So 1K on a row and ski is 2K on a bike. What would happen there they would have a race where they just had to have people standing around really watching people go up and down the lanes, and there'd be no counting reps. And it would be probably the easiest race in the world to judge, especially if they sort of sorted a few things out with burpee broad jumps. And obviously one thing they need to sort out as well is, like, people argue about the variability of carpet and stuff like that. And on an Olympic stage, that needs to be spot on. There can't be variabilities like that, I don't think. But yeah, I think that would have been probably, a great, I think Hyrox as it is would be a great Olympic sport. Yeah.
Yeah, no, do you know what? You dive into some really good stuff, and we're going to unpack your race in a second now, but that was really cool. So just a quick word on Deca. You're not a Deca affiliate, right?
No, not yet, but we have people doing Deca. So we've had, I think it's a gym up in Clitheroe, is it?
Yeah.
We've had a few people do the Deca races and love them. They're a bit shorter, aren't they, some of them?
Yeah.
But no, I want to be a Deca affiliate. It's just about, it's just probably me being a bit tight business, going, right, is it gonna drive in? How are we gonna run it? But yeah, it's definitely something I want to do, because Deca's awesome.
Yeah, no, we like it. We like the strong and we like the mile, which obviously we can run from the gym as the affiliate. And there's been conversations about the Deca Fit coming here, but it's the arena. It's like the arena. It's not quite like Hyrox, but it's the arena functional event that they have. So we'll see with that one. So yeah, some really interesting points there about Hyrox. So it sounds like this whole, I like the word you're using, actually, conventional fitness racing. That's really cool. That's kind of got me. That's got me on this, like, exciting moment of, let's go into your race now. Let's talk about it. Dozen as a word in there would suggest 12. So I'm assuming, well, I have had a look, but I hadn't had too much of a look because I want to unpack it with you now. So tell us a little bit about how it works and how it fits into that hybrid space.
Yeah, so basically the infamous training system for a 5K is 12 times 400. And I've always deemed anyone that's sort of strong in a gym but also has an awesome 5K time to be an absolute powerhouse, essentially. Just you're a hybrid athlete, aren't you? If you can, go sub 25K and also like deadlift 200 kilos or whatever it may be, relative to various standards, you're a machine, aren't you? And so I always wanted to include something like that. And it just so happened there was a loop around the park opposite my gym that was 400 meters. So I was like, well, you could do 12 times 400 meters and you do a exercise station in between. Now I wanted them exercise stations to be laborsome. I wanted them to work the functional, fundamental movement patterns like hinge, squat, lunge, push, pull. And I wanted them to be split between what I call distance labors and rep labors. I called them labors. It tied into the 12 labors of Hercules and all that sort of sub-branding that we came up with, just to add a little bit of, quirkiness to it,
really
and gamification.
Good. Really good.
And so the first labor is kettlebell farmers carry. So that's distance up and down. Then it's kettlebell deadlift, which is a rep one. We've got dumbbell lunge, dumbbell snatch, burpee broad jump, kettlebell goblet squat, weight plate front carry, dumbbell push press, bear crawl, plate cleaner press, so ground to overhead, plate overhead carry, and dumbbell devil press. So I wanted them to be just kettlebell or body weight, kettlebell, dumbbell, and weight plate exercises, because the way I see it is every single gym in the world has that equipment. So nowadays, more gyms have sleds, even commercial gyms, but back in the day they didn't. So that's like it was people like, where's a sled? Where can I train a sled? Ski ergs and row ergs are expensive. The tanks on deck is like quite expensive and a very niche bit of kit. So I wanted it to be something that you could literally train in a garage gym. Like if you've got a few weights at home, even if you don't have all the weights, you could have, you know, a couple of kettlebells. You can do the push press. You can do the front carry with a kettlebell. You can do the overhead carry with a kettlebell. So I genuinely believe it's the most accessible training system in the world. And the idea was, like I mentioned earlier, I, as an S&C coach, wanted to design a race that if I was to take loads of different athletes, whether they be rugby players, football players, whether they be, you know, endurance athletes, strength athletes, and go, this is the race that has low technicality. You know, there's no technical barrier to entry. There's no real strength barrier to entry. Obviously, there is you do have to train up some strength. This race is going to test your, like, what I consider to be the two key variables of a fitness racer, which is essentially aerobic power and muscular endurance. So aerobic capacity is your backbone of your, your aerobic power, and, you know, muscular strength is a backbone of your muscular endurance. But ultimately, what conventional fitness racing is going as hard as you can while still primarily being aerobic. So being at that threshold point, that race pace, you know, the faster you can go while still primarily relying on the aerobic system means that you can work for that sort of around the hour that a lot of fitness races are, or what it may be. And also muscular endurance, so your muscles can just keep going. So I created the Deadly Dozen, and I thought, well, actually, this is best suited to athletics tracks. I think athletics tracks are incredibly underutilized around the UK and probably worldwide. And I thought, you know what, we can bring fitness racing to athletics tracks, and I can fit all the equipment that's needed for 300 to 400 people to race on a day in the back of one van. Right. So I genuinely think that this race can go global. It can, you know, we're going national next year. I'm going to go Scotland, London, Wales. I'm going to try and go international as quickly as I can. It's not just a race, it's an entire training methodology. So I wrote a training manual over 255 pages that covers the race rules, but also the methodology around it. But yeah, essentially it's people that have done sims of both Deadly Dozen and Hyrox, more than often they'll say that the Deadly Dozen is more intense because it encourages you to go a little bit faster. However, people that are sort of good at running, they don't mind the Hyrox as much. It's the 1Ks are often daunting to those that are non-runners.
And yeah, I mean the 400. So 400 is a bit of a carrot, right?
Oh yeah, like people.
Yeah. Go on.
What's been really good is all the CrossFitters are going like the weights are too light, the weights are too easy, and I'm like, just you wait. And all the Hyroxers are like, I can't wait to sprint them 400s. Them 400s are going to be so fast, and I'm like, just you wait. And then so it's comparative because any fitness race is the hardest race in the world if you work the hardest you've ever worked. You know, at the end of the day. But by the nature of that one loop around that track, it encourages you to go hard. And the nature of the 12 events is they're laborsome. You know, it's 60 goblet squats. It's all duodecimal. It's all dozenal. So it's based off the number 12. So it's divisible by, 6, 4, 3, 2, 1. So it's a really good training system. And so you're doing 60 goblet squats, doing a run. You're doing 120 meters of bear crawl, doing a run. So it really is going to hit people. And what happens on the day is you do the 12 labors, you cross the finish line, you get your medal, and we have the same timing system that you'd see at, say, Hyrox, which is a timing match. So you get your time for every 400-meter run, and you get your time for every labor, and that gets sent to you on a race certificate.
Awesome. Do you know what? It sounds great. I've seen it. I actually saw it when I think you posted it in the Hyrox community page, UK community page. You talked about doing like a sim ready for, for training for Hyrox, and that's what caught my eye. And being from a kind of general sports background, football, rugby, cricket, played it all at school. You gave me a tennis racket, I joined in with that. And then you kind of go away from that as you grow up, and you realize that there's these individual sports, and then there's OCR, and I was a part owner in a company locally as well. and that was cool. But entry points once you go past a certain level, is it really for everyone? And then hybrid racing has just hit me, because functional training, I've always been about a bit of cardio and a bit of resistance, and here we are with a perfect mix. And then people like yourself come along and create a race on an athletics track, which, as you've pointed out, by the way, I think you make a great point about, I don't think we get enough. So if we build a new town in England, if that was in America, they would start with an athletics track, but we don't. We have to go through these massive, through the red tape to get athletics tracks in local areas now. But for me, a question to you about where this can go. Let's go back to where it's been. So numbers wise, just give me a screenshot of an event that you've done this year with your event and how that's gone.
So that's the thing. We haven't had an event yet. So our first event, our summer series in the UK, is June to September. So we've got a June race, July, August, and September, and we sort of launched the June race, and it was a sort of steady to start. And then what happened was we sort of launched it in the new year. Then Manchester happened, and then June sold out, and then I was like, right, wow, June sold out. So I released September. I thought I won't do July and August because they're the summer holiday months. They'll be quiet. So I released September. With about 300 spots, because I want, there's going to be some teething problems. And I released September and it sold out in a day. Wow. And I must have got about 100 emails wanting to be on waiting lists. And also what I got was dozens and dozens of messages saying, when's it coming to California? When's it coming to Texas? I want to run a race in QA, all this sort of stuff. So we've got people flying over from different countries coming to do the Deadly Dozen in Macclesfield, a small town in Cheshire, just outside of Manchester. And then I thought, right, I'll do two more. I'll do July, August. May as well do the summer months, do a series. And they're not fully sold out yet. I have added more spaces to the June race as well, because I bought basically double the amount of equipment. So I could do larger waves, and without seeing pinch points or bottlenecks. And essentially we sold, when I released July and August together, so I didn't sell out all in one go. It would have been nice to be honest. But I think it was good because it humbled me a little bit. I think I would have got a little bit too gung-ho and gone, right, let's do another one. And so it was good that they didn't. But we sold about 200 tickets in 10 minutes.
Oh, wow.
And and that's with zero paid advertising. So I started Instagram. Like, my personal Instagram's got quite a large following, over 100,000, but not so much in the UK. We have a big audience in India, Pakistan, because I give a lot of educational content away for free. I give free ebooks out, and a lot of that's on anatomy for fitness professionals. And it just so happened that it really blew up in India and places like that. They like the free educational content. So that didn't really transfer across. When I shared my new Insta, I thought, right, I've got 100,000 followers. When I share my new Instagram page, it'll get thousands of followers straight away. It didn't. I was like, well, hang on a minute, no one's following the new page. I had like 100 followers, and then it accelerated a little bit. So we've got a couple of thousand followers, but it's not been anything huge. But with no paid advertising, that is, the people have just been coming through. Now, I won't lie. A massive part of that is the Hyrox group, because Hyrox Birmingham sold out in, like 6 minutes after they give the tickets to the affiliates. And it left a lot of people upset. And a lot of people were looking at other races, and a lot of people that are, essentially disappointed that they didn't get in Hyrox were like, right, what else can I do? So there's no doubt that right now is the time. Like, I think if I released the Deadly Dozen last year, it wouldn't have had the same impact. It's definitely a good race, and people are looking at it and going, that is similar to Hyrox. The amount of messages I've got where people have gone, I prefer that concept with the 400s. Of course they do, because I looked at Hyrox and I thought to myself, what are barriers to people? And the 8 times 1K is probably the biggest barrier to most people. They're on runner time. Yeah, so 400 like negates that a little bit.
Yeah, no, I agree, because that's where the winners come from as well. The good runners.
Yeah.
The winners come from that point. So that I completely agree. Yeah, that's a great point.
So yeah, Hyrox has been massive. I joke about, I joke that basically when Manchester gets released, I can't wait for it to sell out, because it's just going to leave more people wanting more. And in all honesty, that's an interesting one. I don't know if we'll go on to it, but it's you know, they give a lot to affiliates and people argue, but the way I see it, them tickets are selling out anyway. I would be really disappointed if I didn't get in. And especially if I'd been doing races since the early days, you know, you feel real disenfranchised. But at the end of the day, affiliates or not, them tickets are selling out fast. There's going to be thousands of people disappointed. I think the only solution for Hyrox is more races. Because either way, you give 75%, 50%, 25% to affiliates, which I do think they deserve. If you're paying to be an affiliate, you need some benefit. You just need more races because the tickets are going to sell out either way, aren't they? And it's fantastic that they are. I mean, incredible, but it's also I understand why people are so disappointed. I mean, people have in their head, I'm gonna do Birmingham Hyrox in October, and you sort of know months in advance, you're already training for it, and then it's gone.
It's interesting, and you've touched on it there, but is two questions, same A and B part, if you like. The summer series that you've talked about there in your time slots, is that because of the weather, and is it because of the Hyrox off season?
No, so it wasn't to do with the Hyrox off season at all. It was purely to do with the weather. And come rain or shine, the Deadly Dozen's on. You can wipe the kit down. People can get a little bit muddy. The reason why, though, it has to be summer really in this country is because the inside of a track, although we do use mats for the rep labours, which is, you know, deadlift and lunge and stuff like that, the grass is not perfect. It's not like a 3G pitch. Shot puts get thrown on it, javelins, and it's not really just that. It's also that there's often not great drainage in these tracks. So in the winter months, they can get quite boggy. So it's just not ideal. So yes, you could run one in the winter and you'd be a little bit wet and muddy, but it's better in the summer. So my plan realistically is to have a summer series in the UK and then go abroad to the warmer countries and do through the winter. And like I say, the way I go about that, whether it's me, you know, coming across with vans, you know, driving across into Europe and Ireland and whatnot, or whether it's actually partnering with big gyms in places like Dubai, it's a small cost, the amount of equipment that we need, as long as there's a track. I mean, you don't have to be on a track, but it is a little bit of a USP. You could be on a big, you know, field. But yeah, it's likely that we'll start to sort of license it out and partner with gyms and have, I mean, when you're in a warm climate, you're good to go every weekend of the year, aren't you?
Yeah.
But yeah, in the UK, I'm sort of hoping that one of them does rain, just so we can get some footage of everyone doing it in the rain. I mean, there's no chalk allowed, and if your grip's slippy, It's called a Deadly Dozen. The only, you know, I got asked what trainers you wear, same as Hyrox, really. However, you are going on grass, and there is a risk that you're going to get a little bit muddy. You're not going to get, it's not OCR, you're not diving in any ice baths or anything like that, but it is grass. And you're going from running around the track to jumping on the grass.
Yeah, you answered one of my questions there, which was, you know, this idea of whatever you'd want to call it, but like affiliation to gyms. And you've obviously spent a lot of time building a training manual for this. So with what Deca and Hyrox have both done, would you be a liar to say it wasn't on the horizon if it all goes well? Is it something you want to do?
We've already got gym affiliates, so it's £12 a month if it's a Dozenal brand, but I want it to be really cheap, right? Because basically I've got like the manual here, the big, you know, 255 pages. But what I wanted was not just gyms, but coaches, boot camps. Everyone can be Deadly Dozen affiliates, and you can pass the exam, which is 60 questions, and you become a Deadly Dozen master coach, and that's on our online learning platform. So when you pay £12 a month, you get access to the online hub, you get discount to races, you get early access, you get educational materials, you get the manual, you get support from us, you get all the branding materials, so you can push yourself as a Deadly Dozen gym, Deadly Dozen coach, Deadly Dozen boot camp. But we want to have it much cheaper, but try and work with these individuals. So you go on the website and whatnot, but we work with these individuals to try and help them grow as we grow. And, you know, and as the race is going to grow, I'm sure we'll have, you know, we've already had, I think we've got about 10 affiliates, 10 or 12 affiliates. We've got one of the biggest performance centers in the country. So the Athlete Factory trains people like Paddy Pimblett, Veronica Hardy, and, you know, so elite UFC fighters. One of my companies is called Combat Sports Performance Coach with a guy called Paul Reed, who trains some of the best fighters in the world, an absolutely exceptional combat sports coach. And the Athlete Factory in Chester is, if you see pictures of it, it's a phenomenal facility, you know, trains world-class athletes. And that's a Deadly Dozen affiliate. I've got other gyms in Macclesfield. Another gym, VT Personal Training, is an affiliate. And I've just had, I think there was actually 2 this week, gyms that have signed up to be affiliates. And they can run simulations. They can run, they can run and host simulations and stuff like that. Then the next stage, which is what I was referring to before, earlier, was the sort of licensing, which is this is the sort of franchising. So there's one thing where you're an affiliate and you can class yourself as an affiliate gym or coach. The next step is actually, I've got a legal team that's working on all this. Obviously, the intellectual property, everything's in the manual and that's been published. It's got an ISBN, so that provides a lot of protection. But what we're working on is how we're going to approach us going to Dubai and saying, well, actually, this big gym facility here with a track, they can run the races, and we'll go out there and we'll teach them how you run the races. And potentially we could have races running concurrently in the United States, in Mexico, in Canada, in Dubai, because it honestly is probably the most accessible race in the world. It all fits in a van, and it provides an experience that is, people so far just doing sims, people are loving the race. And as you can see, there's a proof of concept that, we've launched the race and it sold almost 1,000 tickets.
Yeah, no, this is exciting, and I feel privileged to actually have this conversation at this stage, because from what I'm learning about what DECA is in the US, like apparently it's nuts and they love it. And you're getting people ask about this from places such as the States. You throw that into America and they'll love it. They've probably got the best facilities in the world for that sort of stuff. They've got them in every corner and town that you go to, because of their sort of high school and their college system. Everyone has a track. Every town has a track. It's not like that here in the UK, although we've got a lot of tracks now, but not like those countries. That's really interesting. That's really interesting as someone who's passionate about hybrid fitness racing. It's actually really interesting as a gym owner as well, who has become a DECA affiliate and a Hyrox affiliate, because, we're looking at your race and we think we fancy a go. Like, we don't know what state we'll be in, but we fancy a go. And there's certainly a few of us that have noticed it the last few weeks and thought, oh, that's probably, I think accessible is the word. Like, I don't know if like everyone's purposely competing, bit of banter behind this question really, but this like, it's accessible approach. Like DECA talk about it, Hyrox talk about it, you've talked about it. And actually, what's your tagline? I read it earlier and I've forgotten it. I meant to write it down, about it's the hardest race in the world, but the most accessible race.
So our short tagline is beat the race, which is essentially what I wanted there. Was a lot of people aren't trying to compete against other people. It's you versus the race. And I wanted to really push that. But the longer tagline is one of the hardest yet most accessible fitness race in the world.
That was it.
And and I truly believe it. I'm going to say it right now that I think it is the most accessible fitness race in the world, right? Because it only uses equipment that is accessible to everyone. Like, even in, very, environments where there's not the funding or the money to buy expensive equipment, you can use essentially any weight plate that is available to you to do these exercises. So that's, dumbbells, weight plates, and kettlebells are fundamental. I mean, that's fundamentally what kettlebells were, that if you couldn't afford barbell and plates, you had kettlebells. And also, what I wanted to do with the race, I didn't want sort of row, ski, cycling within the race, because I've got what's called now Deadly Dozen Run. Now I can do Deadly Dozen Row, Deadly Dozen Ski, Deadly Dozen Cycle, even Deadly Dozen Swim, Deadly Dozen Climb, an OCR event. So you could hire 100 rowers and have the 12 labours in between a 400 metre row. You could have it in between a 400 metre ski, an 800 metre cycle. You could do a monkey bar rig, a rope climb, whatever it may be. You could do obviously the labour only event, the Deadly Dozen Strong, which is just the labours. We've actually even got a ultra event where you do more, you've got a double deadly dozen where you do 800 meter between each, 800 meter run, between each labor. We've even got youth versions where we've regressed the weights down to like 1 kilo dumbbells, then regressed it even further. You can go to like even just a sandbag. So going right back, because I've wrote programs for youth and I've written about youth S&C, we've stripped it right back to people as young as 6, 7, and 8, through to sort of 12 to 14-year-olds, 14 to 16-year-olds, and we've developed the race for them. So we've regressed it down to be appropriate for their level. So you've got the youth races, you've got the adult races, you've got the variation. So although I do believe running is quite core to fitness racing, because you can argue that alongside sort of resistant training movements like squats and lunges, there's nothing more functional than running. However, running is a major barrier, and people have injuries that doesn't allow them to run. So you get people that have been athletes and they're still very fit, but they can't run. And that's where I do want to release variants of the race where they're non-running. And I don't want it to just be strong. I want it to still have that cardio component, like you mentioned, which is, cardio and resistance. So the rowing machine, the skier, the bike is a perfect way of doing that. You can use different bikes. You could have air bikes. You could have bike ergs. So yeah, I think it is the most accessible fitness race in the world, and it can be done in any location where you can have a loop. It doesn't have to be a 400-meter loop. It could be an indoor track. But it could be a 200-meter loop and you run around twice, if you're doing a smaller event. It's just that the 400-meter track allows for a lot more people to be on the inside, because it's actually quite big. It's like 100 meters by 60 to 70 meters, the inside of a track.
And just one last question on that, actually. That just made me think of it on the spot with a layout concept. One of the big attractions to these events is participation, but also spectator viewing. Have you got that all sort of planned out, how people can get around and see it?
Yeah, so obviously you can be the whole way around. The beauty of the athletics tracks is it's like a stadium, isn't it? Yeah. So you can go around all the outside, but we're actually letting people cross to the center of the track. So our what we call labor lanes are only 30 meters. So you have another 30 to 40 meters of grass at the top. So people can literally get amongst it. And we're not talking like you're at, say, the ski, and then you've got to walk over there to go to the burpee broad jump. You're right there at them people doing, farmers carry, kettlebell deadlifts. You can also turn around and see people at any point of the track. So you're seeing it. It's all like in this little sphere, which is the track. You're amongst it essentially. And then what we're trying to do is obviously create a slight festival field where we have the vendors and we have other things going on. But yeah, we've got all the volunteers. We need about 50 to 60 volunteers to judge on the day. And we have a volunteer pack for that. We have a sign-up form on the website for anyone that wants to do it. We, t-shirts, you get fed, you get loads of gifts like that. And yeah, it's. I think it's going to be one of the best spectator experiences, because I do think that although we all love fitness racing, you've always got to ask, like, how exciting is it compared to other sports where there's less variables? So powerlifting, there's very few variables. It's not exciting to watch. CrossFit's more exciting because there's more variables. Fitness racing, Hyrox. I think the Deadly Dozen's got a really good spectator experience because you can see everything all at once. Nothing's too far away. You're never more than 100 meters away from anyone, or 50 meters really, if you're sort of stood in the center of the track.
Yeah, no, that's wicked. That's cool. I'll check the dates out if it's all right with you. And I'm no filmmaker, but I like to come and make some on location stuff.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The podcast. So I've done a couple so far. So it'd be good to come and capture this, because it just sounds awesome, and to see it in the flesh would really capture the moment, I think, and obviously get it out there for you. I'm sure you've got your filmmakers ready for the events, and you'll be capturing it.
Yeah, we give free photo. But so one thing I wanted to do, I think sometimes when you're the little guy, you try harder, don't you? And you do, that's what you need to do. So you want to go better customer service, because I'm only getting so many emails a day. I can get back to them within hours, if not, at very least the same day. I can do, it's free parking. One of the benefits of athletics tracks is they're designed to have multiple schools turn up to compete. So they've got big car parks that are free. So the parking's free. It's free for spectators. There's food and drinks on the day, obviously, that you pay for from the vendors. Volunteers get free food, and you get a medal and you get a race certificate. And, you know, we try our hardest to look after people so that we give them a free photo package. Because at the end of the day, the way I see it is, if I've got, you know, 1,000 people compete this year and I give them a load of free photos, they're going to share them. It's great marketing. So it's just adding that sort of them benefits that you sort of try to do as a little guy. You know, you try to work harder. You know, if you're in second place, you work harder.
Yeah, and
Although we're
actually,
in second place, we're further down, but we're climbing.
no, you know, I mean, my experience of hybrid fitness racing is, you know, Hyrox and Decker so far. And yeah, why not hold your own? Why not why you have a place? You have a place for sure. I think that the number of people that want to do this type of stuff, like you said at the beginning, seems to be rapidly growing. And that was what we went with on the intro as well. So, you know, I think it's rapidly growing. And my last question on your race, you've just answered yourself, is do you get a medal and a t-shirt? You get a medal.
You get a medal. So I'll show you the. We have patches as well, actually, that we sell the patches because we thought it would be a bit different. So the patches look like that.
I mean, imagine one of those on your Built for Athlete bag, right?
On the rucksacks, yeah, they're all well keen, aren't they? And the medal, as I wanted to go quite unique with the medal, so it's a box chain stainless steel. It's heavy, so it could be a key ring, but it's the Deadly Dozen, so it's Maury, the school bell. I don't know how.
Yeah,
it's
no,
quite
we can
hard to
see
get it in
that.
focus.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's solid steel, so it's a weighty thing. So our branding is Maury. It's in the manual. We lean into the whole 12 labors of Hercules, stoicism. So there's a stoic quote on most of the pages. I think it lends itself well to hard physical training and also sort of training of the mind. That's stoicism. It's not, you know, bottling up emotions. It's, you know, the domestication of emotions. It's about understanding what you can and can't affect. You know, and that's what it's all about. And I wanted to include that. So that's the sort of the school bell logo. It's quite sinister looking. It fits the brand. And obviously we've just had that cast into a stainless steel medal. On a steel chain, so it's a little bit different. You get them at every event, and you can sort of, what we're trying to do is sort of gamify it by, you can collect the Maury medals. It's a sort of salute to Memento Mori, which is remember you must die, which sounds morbid, but it's like live a good life, you know, live life to the fullest. So you can collect them, and then you get awarded sort of patches, and that's what we'll give to winners. So we don't actually do podiums on the day. What happens is the top 12 athletes become the Deadly Dozen. They get sent a Deadly Dozen patch, and everyone gets a medal upon completion, because I want it to be a race that you get your wave time. You'll know before signing up to the event that if you're a solo, you're between 9 and 12, and if you're a pairs, you're between like 12 and 3. But we send more specific race times through the seedings, you know, weeks prior. So we want it to be something where you can rock up an hour before the race, do the race, which might be around an hour. You know, it depends. You know, really fast people around 40 minutes, slower people around 2 hours, and then you get your medal. You can go if you want to. We don't want people hanging around if they don't want to hang around. We want people to stay if they want to. But then you also get a race certificate. So data and metrics are really key for me as an S&C coach. So every 400 meter is timed. Every labor station is timed. There's not much of like what you'd call a rock zone, because you cross into the center of the track. There's a little bit of travel to where the labor station is, but they're all in order along the track. So you'd run the 400 meter loop and just run a little bit further. So I've got a sort of picture of it here where it looks like that. Here's one I did earlier. Run around the track, first one, run around the track, second one. So it's a very, very simple layout. You run a loop, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, up to 12, finish, head off, get some scran, and you're done. So everyone gets sent that certificate, and they look at the metrics and they see it as a sport. The race never changes. So they think about these fundamental movements. They think about these 400s and they go, right, where am I slowing? I'm not very good at the dumbbell lunge. I'm better at the deadlift. I'm going too hard on the deadlift, and my 400 meters slow afterwards. The burpee broad jumps are destroying me. The bear crawl is going to get a lot of people. And that's what I want people to look. I want people to look at it and go, right, where am I going to improve? And then they come back next time and go again.
And they will. In their dozens, they will come back and they will try again and again, because we all want to do that. Because that's what humans want to do, right? You just do it once and it's addictive. So I could go on, but one last question about your race. When did this concept in your head start? You know, when did the idea hit you, and how long has it taken to get to where it is now?
So I reckon, there's always been something that I've wanted a race for years. I mean, we did like the 5S fitness games at the gym. We had different races and competitions at the gym. So there's always been that. But it wasn't till about probably just over a year ago, maybe more, maybe in 18 months, where I really started to think, I want to develop a race that is what I started to call conventional fitness racing. Like I started to categorize, do research when I was writing the manual about all the different fitness races and CrossFit and OCR and, what made a good race, what were the barriers to entry. And I came up with what was conventional fitness racing, looked at how successful Hyrox was and DECA, and realized, what I thought was the secret sauce, essentially. And then I spent 6 months writing the manual. Now, obviously, I've published around 20 manuals on strength training, warming up, Olympic weightlifting, stuff like that. So a lot of that content went in because I didn't just want the manual to be how to do the deadly dozen. I wanted it to be like a personal training course or a strength and conditioning qualification in one book. So it covers everything, warming up, Olympic weightlifting, and, Olympic weightlifting, just to sort of say, look, we've got these lifts in the deadly dozen, like a weight plate version and a dumbbell version. Here's the barbell versions for your interest. So it covers everything from periodization, needs analysis, energy system development, everything you can think of. I wanted to throw into that manual. So I spent, 3 or 4 hours a night every evening once the kids were in bed, got home from the gym at 9 o'clock, kids are in bed, got on the laptop, was writing the manual for about 6 months. And that's where I developed every aspect of the race, from the training methodologies, the race itself, how it runs, right down to the sub-branding, which was, adding in the stoicism, just because I believe that alongside hard physical training, it makes you harder mentally, and stoicism complements that idea that, you just don't, worrying doesn't change anything, essentially. And so it's been about a year where I've really been working on this now. And now I've got a small team where we're starting to really mechanize stuff, because I've had business partners in the past, but now I'm sort of like a one-man band with some of my stuff. I've got lots of coaches, but I've realized that this company has such potential compared to my other companies, which are all, doing reasonably well. And we've got, staff and coaches and assessors on the academy. But I think this needs a team, and this team needs to grow, and it needs to grow quite fast, because I think this race needs to grow rapidly. So I would say about a year of hard work from myself. And in the last few months, we've started to develop a team, and we've realized, the proof of concept's there. We're going to go national and international as fast as we can. And this is where I need to start developing a team. So I need to start finding key people, basically, who's a good man, who wants to be involved with it. I'm at a stage, really, it's quite an exciting time where, I'm on this podcast now, like, who wants to be involved?
Oh, it sounds epic. It sounds like where you are right now is like, I've been there. I've got a business. I've grown from a little boot camp in the park to what I've got now. And that it's an exciting journey, and you sound so passionate and ready for it. And you're gonna sell the gear at the races, because that looks cool.
Yeah. So we've got we're selling this time t-shirts and patches. I'm going to keep it simple. Yeah. I would like to get a whole clothing range, but yeah, what I went with is we've got Deadly Dozen is like on the back, which looks really cool, like big deadly, and it's what's called like the sort of like the chiller font. It's a very sort of creepy, evil looking font. And then we go for the embroidered skull bell, the Maury skull bell, who's the the mascot of the race. So it's fully embroidered. We've got a white one for the judges, limited edition, and it says judge in red under the sort of black Deadly Dozen. So we'll be selling black t-shirts with the white writing, and we'll be selling the patches. And I want to keep it all reasonably priced, but depending on how well the merch goes, we'll lean into clothing and other forms. It lends itself, someone said to me, it lends itself to a bottle opener. I was like, a bottle opener doesn't necessarily fit with like health and fitness, but then again, you complete a fitness race, it'd work well, wouldn't it, as a bottle opener? It would. But yeah, I'll lean into the merch if it sells well. I think it's a cool brand. It's a Skull Bell.
Yeah, no, this is obviously when we're going to interview a guest, we're going to look you up what we can find out. So I did that, but what I've learned here tonight is a lot. A lot of good stuff for our industry. And for me, it's all about the people, relationships, the journey, where you go, who you meet, what you do. And a platform that you're creating is going to absolutely, I think, give another place to go and have fun and fitness, test yourself against the race, be competitive if you want to be, all of that. And this sounds awesome. And I agree. I hear what you're saying about the growth, and I agree. From an outside perspective, I think you are right, and I think this is blowing up. And I think Deca need to be quick, otherwise they're going to miss the UK market. And I have reported that back. They do need to be quick, otherwise they'll miss the UK market.
I think one of the things that Deca's got is, what I've realised is, so they're going with the 2 events, they're really pushing sort of gym events. And I think one of the problems you've got with gym events sometimes is they don't feel like big events. So it doesn't give it necessarily that credibility so Hyrox has uber credibility because they're at like convention centers. Now if I did my event at a local park that had a 400-meter track or a field, and it was just as professionally set up as it is now, I don't think it would have the credibility that it has being at an official athletics track. Now, I have less credibility, I think, being in Macclesfield than if it was in Manchester, at the Manchester Regional Arena. If I was having it at the Manchester Regional Arena, that'd have more credibility. So my next step is to go to all the city centres. So I think what is both a massive strength of Deca is that they've got this race that can be at all the gyms, and it's a fantastic concept, and it's good, and it will grow, and it will be huge. But I think it's also like a con, because it not as in pros and cons, not a con. It's also, being in gyms, it's less official, isn't it? It doesn't feel like an event where you're rocking up to an arena or a location. And it's like you said about the Deca Fit, that's one of its strengths. And I think that's why that it's not seen, even though Spartan's like a huge company, it's got big in this. I think Spartan's a real powerhouse, isn't it, in the States?
Yeah.
So that's why they've grown so fast. But it's I think that's one of the things that might sort of, it doesn't have that Hyrox feel, because they're going for it's a different concept. And I think where I've benefited in some ways is that athletics tracks are actually really cheap to rent, because they're designed for athletics, not for massive conventions. And but they feel like an arena. We're going to have hundreds of, if not thousands of people there at an athletics track that's built to have that many people. Yet it's quite a cheap space to hire, and it's got like a clubhouse with loads of toilets. It's got everything you need there. Usually there's like a leisure centre or something bolted onto them. So you've got everything you need. It's cheap to hire, and it feels official. So that's where I think Deca's brilliant, but it does feel a little bit less official with it being a gym. And I also feel that sometimes the very short races, that caps how far people will go. So like that was important to me with Deadly Dozen, that if it started to fall below the half hour, people start going, well, I'm not going to drive 2 hours to do a half-hour race.
Yeah.
Where as it starts to get up to that hour, people are more than willing to travel. And I think there's a Goldilocks zone with that. I think some of my guys went across to Clitheroe and they said, it was quite far to travel just for a 20-minute race.
Yeah.
Because they were going hard and they were getting like sub 20 and stuff.
Us Southerners, we come up to somewhere like Macclesfield for a weekend, then for an hour. We'd do that for an hour's race. We'd do that, we do that for Hyrox. We come up and stay up there and, have a weekend in Manchester and do the race and go to the event all weekend kind of thing. So, awesome. We could go on forever, but that's fine. That's awesome. Well, do you know what? It's been a real pleasure interviewing you, because I like that I've managed to talk to you at this stage, because the passion's there. You can hear it. I'm excited for you. I'm excited to see this journey and where you go. I'm definitely going to do one. Anyone who listened, we're very few episodes in so far, but we've got some regular listeners, and I know I'm going to get held to that now. So the thing is, they can come with me, and we'll all go and do one. So awesome. I will put all your links and everything in the description so people can find the page, website, Instagram handle, all of that, so people can have a look for it. One last question for you. Top 3 tips for somebody getting into hybrid fitness racing.
Top 3 tips is initially, build a running base, run slow to get fast. So one long steady run at the minimum a week where you just don't try and work hard, just build an aerobic base and give it time, let the mum set in, it works and it develops a base. That's a foundation. Second tip is do the circuit training. Like, people sort of have this sort of like, they sit on the high horse about circuit training. They think it's basic. Fitness racing is circuit training. That's what it is. It's one big circuit as a competition. So whereas other athletes might not hammer themselves through circuit sessions because they can't justify the recovery cost because they're weight cutting, they're MMA fighters, you are a fitness racer. So that is your sports specificity, is compromised running, doing goblet squats into ski, going for a run, doing burpee broad jumps. That is your sport. It's like an MMA fighter doing sparring. It's like a footballer playing football. So I think sometimes, I don't think you should oversim, but sometimes people act like you'll explode if you do a racing. So these fitness races are not comparable to running marathons and triathlons and Ironmen. So you're not going to explode from doing hard race sims and stuff, but you don't want to be trying to PR on these things and doing far too specific training and race sims all the time, because you'll burn out, you'll get bored and you'll burn out. You won't when you first start, because it's all exciting. So allow yourself to do a sim and stuff like that. However, vary up what you're doing. If you're doing Hyrox, do deadly dozen training, add a bit of deca in, because that type of stuff will help. And although zone 2 stuff is fundamental for building that base, with a lot of these races having the core of running, you need to get used to being uncomfortable. You need to get used to working at a threshold pace, and you need to establish that. And then the third thing would be, alongside building the aerobic base, build a strength base. And that doesn't have to be powerlifting style barbell work if you don't enjoy it. Try things like strength circuits where you just ramp the weights right up. So if you're used to working with 16 kilo kettlebells, try doing farmer's carry with 32s. Do your goblet squats a little bit heavier, do your walking lunges heavier. So start overloading stuff to start building that strength, because that's another foundation. And then, just as a bonus tip, remember that aerobic power and muscular endurance are your 2 key variables. So think about improving if you're going to do a bit of research, think about improving aerobic power and muscular endurance. And aerobic power is the real sort of cornerstone of basically going fast while not basically hitting the red zone. The faster you can go while still primarily being aerobic, you're the person that's winning.
Nice. That's quality. Brilliant. We're going to talk off screen very quickly in a second, but just want to say, Jason, that was an absolute pleasure. Thanks for coming on the show. And we'll sign off now, guys, and say thanks for listening. Thanks for watching wherever it is you are getting this. And we look forward to meeting here again to talk more on the rocks.